As much as I really ought to walk you through both the history and the mercantile stratification of grocery stores, with your New Seasons, your Whole Foods, and your Zupans at the top tier, and then your elitist pitch hitters like QFC and Trader Joe's, and then your middle layer with your Safeways and your Albertsons and your Fred Meyers, and then your Wincos, and then finally your grocery outlets and your dollar stores. As much as I feel the need to do this, neither time nor attention spans permit, so instead we must get right down to the gist of the matter. The grocery outlet, once upon a time in full the canned food grocery outlet, was likewise once upon a time the quintessential discount grocery store, which is why, once they were finally permitted to open up here, you invariably eventually began to find the dollar stores established virtually next door to each and every grocery outlet, next door or at least within the near proximity. These two stores seem to go virtually hand in hand all the way up until the point in time at which a curious and very unforeseen thing happened. The grocery outlet became trendy, yuppified. These days it is literally on par with Trader Joe's. And when this happened, it left the dollar store almost entirely alone, on its own, at its own level, simply because, by the very nature of its own design, the dollar store could not become more exclusive simply by raising its prices. The dollar store was definitively just that, the $1 store. No single item which it would ever offer would, indeed ostensibly could, ever cost more than $1 single dollar. Now, as you may well know, that was the dollar store's dependable, consistent dynamic all along, from the very beginning. Now, what they did end up doing, perhaps not so much to compete, but merely to contend, was to expand upon their inventory, offering a tremendous variety of goods, to such a degree that in many ways the dollar store came to resemble a modern-day version of the general stores of the Old West. All of the items you see here were purchased at a local dollar store last year for $1 apiece. These are the very basic staples of any conscientious person who makes the effort to maintain a decent household with the quiet, simple dignity which even impoverished people who live on a fixed income can strive to attain. The dollar store permitted them a reliable, accessible means to cope with their economic limitations. Well, as you may know by now, in practice, the dollar store no longer really exists. Unthinkably, just recently they did that which, for all intents and purposes, was never supposed to happen. They raised their prices. It is now, in essence, the $1.25 store. All of these items now cost $1.25. Now, I can well anticipate your response to all of this, having overheard, as I did, the various reactions to this price hike once it went into effect. Big deal. It's only $0.25. Who cares? All the dollar store sells is a bunch of junk. It's all crap. So, who in the hell shops at the dollar store anyway? Well, I believe I have illustrated to you who shops at the dollar store. They are those who are financially insecure and who are trying to do their best to make ends meet. Now, speaking for myself, I shopped at the grocery outlet for decades until they began to raise their prices. And I gradually began to find myself shopping more and more at the dollar store. And even then, sometimes that wasn't viable, in which case I would resort to a little no-name back alley discount store that I happen to know of. The kind of a side street establishment that sells the sort of merchandise that might have fallen off the back of a truck when no one was looking. Just a few degrees removed from the black market. I think you know the kind of place. Now, that should give you some insight into the shoestring, Great Depression era budget with which I run my household. And as such, when I came to learn about the potential 25-cent increase in the prices at the dollar store, I immediately knew just how many people that was going to hurt. And I ventured to say this to a lady who worked there when I asked her about the potential coming price hike. Her response to me was similar to that of a lot of you. It's only a quarter. Instead of 5 for $5, from now on, it will be 4 for $5. A response so pat and flat and mechanical that it might well have been handed down to her from her corporate head office. Now, I did not end up wasting any time arguing with her, just as I do not intend to waste any time here and now trying to convince you. Instead, I will cut to the chase and demonstrate to you why this is such a big deal. And I will employ simple, irrefutable fiscal mathematics in order to do so. As you know, this is a quarter. You see it, you recognize it, you know exactly what it is. But have you ever spent much time considering exactly what it is? Have you ever contemplated that a quarter is precisely what it represents itself to be? A quarter. 1/4 of $1. A quarter of a dollar. 25 cents is 25% of $1. Now, if $1 is the defining figure of the dollar store, what this means is that it is not a question of them raising the prices by a simple quarter. They have not just raised their prices by 25 cents. They have raised their prices by 25%. Still not quite following? Imagine shopping at the dollar store a year ago, filling up your basket, and having the total rung up at the register. And then, when you go to pay for it, having the cashier say to you, "Oh, from now on, we will be charging you an extra 25% of that total." Same difference? How eloquent. All right, let's try it this way. Imagine that you go to your fancy upscale, New Seasons, Whole Foods, Zupans, or whatever uppity yuppie store you happen to frequent. And then, when you get to the checkout stand, the clerk tallies up all of your precious groceries, gives you the total, and then says to you, not, "Oh, from now on, we are going to be charging you an extra 25 cents per item." No, instead says to you, "Oh, from now on, we are going to be charging you an extra 25% on top of whatever the sum total cost of your purchase ends up being." Now it's the same difference. Now perhaps you see why this is such a big deal. And lastly, sadly, now that the precedent has been set, now that the proverbial glass ceiling of a price structure has been irreversibly shattered, they can set the prices as high as they want from this point forward. I was leaving the dollar store the other day, and I overheard a customer saying to the clerk, dollar store. From now on, I guess they should call it the $1.25 store. And the clerk said, nah, they should call it $1 plus from now on.